On the surface, it looked like an impossible success story. Visionary leadership, unbreakable trust, a tech empire destined to change the world. But behind the headlines, a devastating betrayal was quietly unfolding. A single lie, born from desperation, was about to bring that empire to its knees, wipe out billions in value, and shatter the very promise it made to the world. Now, the story you probably heard, the one about a brilliant company getting hit by a sophisticated cyber attack, isn't the whole truth. It's not even close. Today, we're going to dissect a scandal. We'll do it by stepping into a detailed narrative, a case study that, while fictional, is pieced together from the real-world patterns of corporate collapse and the painful realities of human betrayal. This is the story of a company called Aura, a privacy-focused tech giant, and its celebrated CEO, Liam Thorne. We're going to walk through the timeline, look at the evidence, and expose what really happened behind closed doors. This is the untold side of a very public downfall. To really get how deep the betrayal went, you have to understand what Aura was supposed to be. In the data-hungry world of the early 2020s, Aura wasn't just another company. It was a movement. Founded by the charismatic and widely admired Liam Thorne, Aura's mission was simple but revolutionary: give people back control of their own data. Its main product, the Aura OS, was a masterclass in secure computing, promising absolute user privacy through a decentralized zero-knowledge architecture. This wasn't just a marketing slogan. It was baked into their DNA. Liam Thorne was the perfect frontman for this mission. He was articulate, passionate, and had a rare talent for making complex tech feel simple and essential. To the world, he wasn't just a CEO. He was a digital rights crusader. He gave talks at global forums about the sanctity of personal information. He publicly called out data mining giants, and he built a corporate culture that felt more like a tight-knit family of idealists than a multi-billion-dollar corporation. In one famous keynote, Thorne said, "Your data is your life. It's your story. At Aura, we aren't the authors of that story. We are just the guardians of the book." This whole philosophy was built into their security system, a fortress nicknamed the Citadel. It was a masterpiece of encryption and safeguards, built by some of the brightest minds in cybersecurity. Aura was so confident in the Citadel that it offered a standing $10 million bounty to anyone who could breach it. For years, nobody ever claimed it. Journalists in high-risk areas used Aura devices to protect their sources. Activists used its encrypted messaging to organize without being watched. Other companies paid a premium to store their biggest secrets in Aura's ecosystem. By the beginning of last year, Aura was valued at over $50 billion. It was the gold standard, proof that a company could be both wildly successful and ethically solid. The picture was perfect, but deep in the shadows, a crack was starting to form. The first sign of trouble was so small you could barely see it, like a ghost in the machine. It showed up as a tiny data anomaly in a routine report. For a few milliseconds, a tiny fraction of user data packets were being rerouted through a redundant server before going to their destination. It was the kind of fleeting glitch that could be explained away 1,000 times. A minor bug, a network hiccup. The system flagged it, marked it as a low-priority issue, and the report was filed. At a weekly exec meeting, Liam Thorne himself dismissed it. He reassured his top team, which included his two most trusted colleagues, Julian Vance, the stoic and methodical chief security officer, and Ben Carter, the brilliant but slightly anxious chief technology officer. Thorne, Vance, and Carter had been a team since the company's garage days. They were as close as brothers. "The Citadel is the most secure system on the planet," Thorne said with his usual easy confidence. "If a hacker so much as sneezes in our direction, Julian's team knows about it. Let's not go chasing ghosts." Ben Carter, whose teams managed the network architecture, agreed. His engineers ran more tests and found nothing. No intrusion, no bad code, no red flags. The anomaly disappeared. For a few weeks, it seemed like Liam was right. It was nothing. But Julian Vance was the kind of guy who didn't believe in ghosts. He believed in patterns. The anomaly, as small as it was, bothered him. It was a single note played perfectly, but in the wrong key. It broke the cardinal rule of the Citadel's design: direct, absolute, and uninterrupted data flow. He couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't seen a ghost, they'd seen its footprint. Without raising any alarms, he quietly told a small, trusted team to start a background audit, a deep dive into the system's core logs. He didn't know it yet, but he was pulling on a thread that would unravel everything. 3 months later, that single off-key note became a piercing alarm. It kicked off on a Tuesday morning. Customer support was flooded with calls about unauthorized account access. First a trickle, then a flood. Users were reporting that their encrypted files were open, their private messages exposed, and in some cases, financial information linked to their Aura accounts was compromised. Inside Aura, the initial response was controlled chaos. This was the nightmare scenario they had trained for, but never thought would happen. Ben Carter's engineers scrambled, assuming a recent software update had created a vulnerability. Julian Vance's security division went on full lockdown, isolating servers and hunting for the point of entry. Liam Thorne addressed the company, his voice calm but firm over the internal broadcast. "We have a problem," he said, "but we have the best people in the world to solve it. Focus. Protect our users. We will get through this." His composure was a lifeline in the middle of the growing storm. But the storm was bigger than anyone knew. By midday, a notorious hacking collective called Spectre claimed responsibility. They posted a manifesto online, bragging that they had shattered Aura's unbreakable promise and now held the private data of over 20 million users. To prove it, they released a small, heavily redacted sample, just enough to be terrifyingly believable. The market reaction was instant and savage. Investors who had bought into the promise of perfect security panicked. Aura's stock, once a star performer, went into freefall. In a single afternoon, it plunged over 60%, wiping out nearly $30 billion in value. The company built on trust was now the global symbol of its spectacular failure. In a hastily called press conference, Liam Thorne, flanked by a stone-faced Julian Vance and a visibly shaken Ben Carter, faced the world. He looked somber, apologetic, and determined. "We have failed you," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "A malicious and highly sophisticated external actor has breached our defenses. We are working tirelessly with federal law enforcement to find who's responsible and secure our systems. We will not rest until every user's data is safe." The world saw a leader fighting a crisis. But behind the scenes, Julian Vance was starting to suspect that the enemy wasn't outside the gates at all. The data from his first forensic sweep was telling a very different and very confusing story. While the media was obsessed with the hacker group Spectre, Julian Vance and his hand-picked team were locked away in a secure wing of Aura's headquarters they called the Digital Autopsy Lab. The evidence just wasn't adding up. Spectre was known for loud, brute-force attacks that left a ton of digital wreckage. But the Aura breach was elegant. It was silent and precise. No broken firewalls, no shattered encryption. It was like someone had just used the master key to walk right through the front door. The logs showed zero evidence of an external attack. The Citadel's perimeter defenses never went off. It was impossible, unless the attack didn't come from the outside. The thought was so alien to Aura's entire culture that Julian first brushed it off as paranoia. Insider attacks happened, sure, but Aura was different. The employees were believers. A betrayal like that was just unthinkable. But the data didn't lie. Julian's team found the origin point. The breach started from a single access point deep inside Aura's network, an administrative backend server. Access to this server was limited to a tiny handful of senior engineers and executives. Suddenly, the list of suspects shrank from millions of anonymous hackers to a few dozen colleagues Julian knew and trusted. The method was even more unsettling. The attacker hadn't really hacked anything. They had used a legitimate, high-level administrative command to create a temporary, invisible data siphon. This command was a diagnostic tool of immense power, and its use was logged in a supposedly tamper-proof audit trail. When Julian's team pulled the logs, they found another layer of deceit. The logs were clean. Too clean. They showed routine activity, nothing about the massive data theft that had obviously happened. It was like watching a video of a bank vault being emptied, but the security footage just showed an empty room. This meant one of two things. Either their entire logging system had been compromised, a massive feat on its own, or the attacker had a way to operate completely outside the system. The hunt for an external hacker was over. A much more terrifying hunt had just begun, the search for a traitor. The atmosphere on Aura's executive floor turned toxic. The open, collaborative space Liam Thorne had built was now thick with a chilling fog of suspicion. Every conversation felt heavy. Every look was overanalyzed. The family was falling apart, poisoned by the idea that one of them was a snake. Julian Vance's investigation had to be delicate. He couldn't tip off the traitor or wrongly accuse an innocent colleague. His focus naturally fell on the people with the highest system access. And at the top of that very short list was Ben Carter, the CTO. Ben had co-designed most of the Citadel. He held top-level admin keys and knew the system's weaknesses better than anyone. He was also, as Julian knew, under incredible personal stress. His wife was fighting a serious illness, and the medical bills were piling up. Could Ben, a man who dedicated his life to Aura, have been pushed into a desperate corner? The thought made Julian feel sick. He took his findings to Liam Thorne's private office. He laid it all out: the internal origin, the high-level commands, the wiped logs. He didn't say Ben's name, but it hung in the air between them. Liam listened, his face a grim mask. He looked years older than he had a week ago. When Julian finished, Liam was quiet for a long moment, staring out his panoramic window at the city. "Ben," he finally whispered. "No, not Ben. It's not possible. I've known him for 20 years. He's the most honorable man I know. The evidence points to someone with his level of access, Liam," Julian said softly. "The command structure, the knowledge of the logging protocols, it's a very small circle." Liam shot up and started pacing. "Then someone is framing him. Spectre is smarter than we thought. They found a way in, and now they're making it look like an inside job to tear us apart. It's psychological warfare." But Julian's gut told him this wasn't a frame job. It was too perfect. It required a native understanding of the system you just couldn't get from the outside. He decided to focus on the one part of the puzzle that felt truly impossible: those clean logs. How do you erase your tracks from a tamper-proof system? There was only one theoretical way. It involved a fail-safe so secret, so powerful, that only two people in the entire company were even supposed to know it existed: the CEO and the CTO. It was a protocol codenamed Ghost. Ghost was the system's ultimate skeleton key. It wasn't part of the Citadel's daily code. It was a literal ghost in the machine, a deeply embedded protocol designed for one apocalyptic purpose: to restore the entire network from scratch after a catastrophic failure. Activating Ghost gave a user godlike power, letting them operate outside all normal security rules, including the audit logs. It was designed to be untraceable because, in the situations it was built for, the tracing systems would already be dead. Its existence was Aura's biggest secret. And according to protocol, activating it required the simultaneous authorization of two key holders: Liam Thorne and Ben Carter. A two-man rule to prevent any one person from wielding that kind of absolute power. Julian's team started a painful, bit-by-bit forensic scan of the core server's root memory, hunting for the faint digital residue that even Ghost might leave behind. It was like looking for one specific grain of sand on an endless beach. For days, nothing. The traitor had been good. The breakthrough came from a junior analyst on Julian's team. She noticed a tiny power draw anomaly from the primary server's motherboard. The spike happened at 2:17 a.m. on the night of the breach and lasted for exactly 9.4 seconds. It was infinitesimal, but it was there. And it matched the exact moment the data siphon was activated. That power spike was the key. It was the energy signature of Ghost waking up. Using that timestamp, the team isolated a single encrypted command packet executed at that exact moment. Cracking it should have been impossible. But Julian didn't need to crack the whole thing. He just needed to verify the cryptographic signature of the user who sent it. He ran the signature against the company's executive key database. He was expecting to see Ben Carter's key, or maybe a clever forgery. The result popped up on the screen, and Julian felt the floor vanish beneath him. It wasn't Ben's key. It wasn't a forgery. It was a valid, authenticated signature. It belonged to Liam Thorne. But that was only half of it. The two-man rule was absolute. The log should have shown Ben Carter's key, too. It didn't. Instead, there was a second authorization from a user profile Julian had never seen: Amicus. This user didn't exist in Aura's system. No credentials, no history. Yet, the system accepted its authorization. That's when Julian realized the horrifying truth. Years ago, when Ghost was first designed, a secret backdoor must have been created. An override that let one person bypass the two-man rule. A backdoor that only the system's chief architect, the CEO himself, could have built. Liam hadn't just used the key, he had forged the lock. He had betrayed them all from the very beginning. Julian sat in the sterile silence of the lab, the screen glowing in front of him. This was it. The point of no return. The man he'd looked up to, the visionary he'd built his career around, was the saboteur. The shepherd was the wolf. Why? The question was a hammer beating inside Julian's head. Why would Liam Thorne, a man who had it all, blow up his own life's work? Why betray not just his company, but the very ideals he preached? Julian suspected the answer wasn't in the code, but in the man. Scandals like this are rarely born from one bad choice, but from a long, slow rot of integrity, usually hidden behind a charming smile. While his tech team preserved the digital evidence, Julian started a discreet, off-the-books look into Liam Thorne's life outside of Aura. What he found was a secret history of stunning recklessness. Liam Thorne, the public crusader for privacy, had a very private and very expensive secret, a massive, long-running gambling addiction. For years, he'd been burning through money in high-stakes online poker and risky sports betting. At first, he won enough to cover his losses. But as the stakes got higher, his luck ran out. He started chasing his losses, the cardinal sin for any gambler. He quietly sold his stock, took out high-interest personal loans, and mortgaged everything he owned. It wasn't enough. He was drowning in debt, owing millions to offshore creditors who weren't exactly known for their patience. The pressure on him must have been crushing. Publicly, he was the celebrated tech genius. Privately, he was about to lose everything. He was trapped. And then he saw a way out. A terrible, monstrous way out. The Amicus profile was the final piece. The name Julian found was linked to a shell corporation. That corporation had a single transaction in its history. A recent wire transfer of $200 million. The money was payment for delivering the private data of 20 million Aura users. The client was a shady data brokerage firm with known ties to Spectre. The whole scandal was a lie. A carefully staged play. Liam had orchestrated the entire thing. He sold his company's soul to save his own skin. He found the buyers, made the deal, and then used Spectre, the very symbol of what Aura stood against, as the perfect smokescreen. He knew a public breach would crater the stock, but he was past caring about that. He just needed the cash. That $200 million was his golden parachute, his ticket to paying his debts and disappearing. The betrayal was breathtaking. It was a financial betrayal of his investors, a psychological betrayal of every employee who believed in him, and a deep personal betrayal of the people who trusted him most, like Ben Carter, the man he was perfectly willing to let take the fall. With irrefutable proof in hand, Julian Vance made the hardest choice of his life. He bypassed the normal chain of command and called a secret emergency meeting with Aura's board of directors, leaving Liam Thorne off the invite list. In the same sterile boardroom where Liam had so often wowed them with his vision, Julian laid out the sickening truth. He showed them the server logs, the power draw analysis, the cryptographic signatures, and the damning details of the Amicus shell company. The board members went from disbelief to horror, and then to a cold, hard rage. The man they'd trusted with their fortunes had been the company's executioner. There was no debate. The law had to be brought in. 2 days later, the implosion went public. On a gray morning, a fleet of black SUVs descended on Aura's gleaming headquarters. Federal agents swarmed the building as employees watched in stunned silence, their company's heart and soul being methodically packed into evidence boxes. The climax was captured by news helicopters circling overhead. Liam Thorne was intercepted as he tried to leave the building. He didn't struggle. He was calm, almost serene, as if he always knew this day would come. The image was broadcast live across the globe. The visionary CEO, the champion of privacy, led away in handcuffs with a blank expression on his face. The man who built an empire on trust was now the poster child for betrayal. The fallout was total. The news that the CEO himself was behind the breach was a blow from which Aura could never recover. What little public and investor confidence was left vanished instantly. The stock became completely worthless overnight. Aura, once the future of tech, was now just a cautionary tale. In the weeks that followed, the full scope of the damage came into view. Facing an avalanche of lawsuits from users, investors, and regulators, Aura filed for bankruptcy. The company was dismantled, its assets sold for pennies on the dollar. Thousands of employees, many of whom had bet their careers on Liam Thorne's dream, lost their jobs. Ben Carter was publicly cleared of all wrongdoing, but the ordeal left deep scars. He had been put through a private hell, suspected of betraying his life's work while his closest friend, the real traitor, watched it happen. He retreated from the tech world, his passion for it broken by the trauma. Julian Vance, the man who uncovered the truth, became a reluctant hero. His meticulous work formed the backbone of the government's case against Thorne. He was offered top jobs at other major tech firms but turned them all down, soured on an industry where ambition could so easily curdle into corruption. As for Liam Thorne, his fate was sealed. Facing a mountain of evidence, he took a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to wire fraud, computer fraud, and aggravated identity theft. The judge, in a blistering sentencing statement, called his actions a profound and cynical betrayal of public trust on a scale rarely seen. Liam Thorne, the former titan of tech, was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. He traded his legacy for a brief escape from his debts, a deal that cost him absolutely everything. The story of Aura, though fictional, is built from the wreckage of real-world scandals, from Enron to FTX. It's a story about how unchecked ambition and personal demons can topple giants. We've broken down the timeline and the evidence, but it's the human element that makes it so tragic. What do you think about this anatomy of a betrayal? Can a company ever truly recover from a scandal like this? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you find these deep dives valuable, consider liking and subscribing for more content that goes behind the headlines. So what's the real truth behind the Aura scandal? It's not just that Liam Thorne was a criminal. The more painful truth is that the very system designed to prevent such a betrayal was twisted and broken by its own creator. The story of Aura is a brutal reminder that technology, no matter how advanced, is only as good as the people holding the keys. The Citadel was a fortress, but it had no defense against its own king. Aura's legacy isn't its failed products or its worthless stock. Its legacy is a warning. A warning that charisma and a great mission can sometimes hide deep flaws. A warning that in a world where we place so much trust in the companies that hold our private lives, that trust can be shattered in a moment. It proves the old saying, it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. In the end, this isn't just about a fictional company. It's about trust, deception, and the devastating fallout of betrayal. And it leaves us with a difficult question. In an age of digital fortresses built by others, how can we ever really know who holds the keys?